Well, I'm delighted to talk with this group and to celebrate the C-SPAN archive, which I believe, having conducted extensive archival research in Europe and Israel and here in the United States, is probably the most important archive for political communication in this country. And I have had the opportunity then to explore the C-SPAN archive of Trump rallies. And so when Donald Trump decided to run for the presidency, he decided to engage in a number of rallies. And at this point, as of last night, he has reached 453 rallies. Now, I want to state pretty clearly that here in Oregon, we have mail-in balloting, and I mailed in my vote yesterday, and I did not vote for him. And I find him quite problematic. But as a scholar, my goal is to understand why he is persuasive and how he has been able to galvanize so many of our fellow citizens to vote for him. And the argument that I have reached or am making is that the rallies that he hosts play a major role in solidifying the support that he has for himself. I have identified Wisconsin as a place where the rallies have made a pretty big impact. And in my studies, I've identified three particular rallies that I'd like to share with you. One was held in Janesville in March of 2016 during the Republican primary, a second in Green Bay during the general election, and then I participated in a rally in Wisconsin, Milwaukee earlier this year. The first rally I will discuss will be the Janesville rally, which then allows me then to share with you how my students have studied these rallies too. Over the last 3 years, I've taught a number of courses in rhetoric, and I've had my students use the C-SPAN database to study these rallies. So I'll share with you a student paper based on an analysis of the Green Bay rally. And then, very briefly, I'll talk about my experience actually participating in a rally. And as we think about Trump's supporters and Wisconsin in particular, I'd like for you to keep in mind this image. And this image is the GM factory, which was established in 1923 and was closed in 2008. In part because of NAFTA and because of the entrance of China into the WTO. And so you will hear Trump talk about NAFTA and China and the TPP in his Janesville presentation. I have tried to find left-wing critics to help illuminate an understanding of Trump, and George Packer, who is one, says that the effects of globalization on the Midwest were like those of a tornado. And Jim Tankersley, who recently wrote a book about globalization, has argued that globalization has cut out the ladder from underneath many people in the middle class as a result of, again, globalization. So the three sites of the rallies that I study are, again, Janesville in the south, Green Bay in the north, and then Milwaukee in the middle of Wisconsin. And the blue dots that you see are places that have been directly affected by hyperglobalization. And so the question becomes, why did the Trump phenomenon evolve? And the answer that many scholars have reached is that the right-wing movement that Trump represents is a symptom, and that the rallies and Trump himself become accelerators. And so the two work together. They are intertwined. We do give agency, and we should give agency to Trump and the rallies, but he was responding to a rhetorical situation of people in the middle class in the Rust Belt who have felt deep in economic insecurity as well as significant racial anxiety. So in the scholarly world, we've approached the Trump issue from four different perspectives. There are observational methods, and they are led by David Autor at MIT, who has really a block busting article on the American Economic Review that indicates that NAFTA and TPP and the other trade agreements really affected the political terrain in Wisconsin, moving people to right-wing methods and right-wing movements. We also have survey methods with Sides et al. Who argue that it is truly racial anxiety that is provoking the right-wing movement that Trump has been able to develop. And then there are those like George Sanders who go to rallies and try to understand their lived experience. And then in my field, we look at persuasion and argument and symbols. And Roderick Hart's book,
she was on yesterday a little bit.
This year is one indication of that kind of scholarship. So before we talk about Trump rallies, we need to keep in mind that they are rituals with three scenes. Typically, Trump rallies take place in a large space in rural America. There's an invitation where local Republican dignitaries are notified. They tweet in advance. And then in scene two, supporters arrive early for the rally. And so when I attended the Milwaukee rally at the beginning of the year, I stood for 2 hours with people from Milwaukee and Illinois and the surrounding areas and heard and listened to what they had to say. And then there is a prelude to Trump entering where we hear a lot of campaign issues and songs. And then in Act 2, supporters find their places. The president is introduced. Audiences take their scene. And again, as Robert mentioned, I played football in high school and college. And so the Milwaukee rally was much like attending a football game. And then finally, at the end, there's a scene 3 where Trump pulls everything together, usually using the same script. But between Acts 3 and Acts 1, he engages in improvisational integration of themes. And while he returns to themes, he's able to adapt to new ones. And Trump is quite a visual speaker because he looks out into the audience and he's able to weave what he sees into what he says. And so we'll go directly now to the Janesville rally that was held back during the primary. And this can be found on the C-SPAN website. It's a glorious video, very well produced. There's a transcript that the students can take and analyze for themes, and it's also closed captioned. So it's really state of the art. It's really terrific. You'll hear then Trump enter. He will say, we have 5,000 people who cannot get in. At this time, he's running against Lion Ted Cruz, and he argues about the evangelical group. And what I'd like you to watch is how well he is able to adapt to his audience. He takes a 363-degree view, looking at everyone, seeing people, and then embracing the people that he does see. In the middle of the presentation, he sees bikers and veterans, and he talks about them. And then one of his audience members says, after he asks, why do the bikers love me? And the answer is, you don't take any shit. And that, I think, is an indication of why he gained popularity in that area. I'd also like for you to remember or to note how often the phrase "I love you" is omitted, because often the rallies are depicted by the major media as these dens of hatred, but they are also communities. He's able to build a community in which the phrase "I love you" does break out. And so I have about a 4-minute clip of a Trump rally in Janesville.
Thank you. I feel so badly. Outside, we have 5,000 people and they can't get in. I feel badly. I want to apologize. We have speakers outside, but I want to apologize. Who would have thought? We have over 5,000 people cannot get in. So now, does anybody want to leave and give your place to somebody outside? No, I had a feeling you might be saying that. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with you. Very important. You know, we're doing really well. Millions of votes ahead of Cruz. Millions. You know, I get a kick. I call him Lion Ted. Lion Ted Cruz. He stands up And I win, as you know, you've seen it. I have been winning all of the evangelical vote. But he stands up Bible high, puts it down, and then he lies. You know, it's like it's amazing to watch it. But he said, yeah, I'm the only one that can beat Donald Trump. I've done it time after time. And I said, wait a minute, I've won like most of the states. I think he had 5 or 6 and I had 20 or 22, right? And I said, I can't believe it. Then I have millions of votes more. He says, I'm the only one that can outvote him. And I'm saying, but I have like millions of votes more. I'll tell you something so important. There is something happening. It's like a movement. It's incredible. It's a movement, and we're part of the movement. It's not me. I'm a messenger, to be honest. I'm a messenger. And this is something that's so special and so amazing. And it's on the cover of Time magazine. It's on the cover of every newspaper. It's something that has maybe never happened. And they're saying it's a phenomena. Sometimes they say, I'm a phenomena. I'm not.
Well, you got a little click here. He goes on.
Something that has maybe never happened, and they're saying it's a phenomena. Sometimes they say I'm a phenomena. I'm not. The message is what we want. We want jobs. We want jobs. We want trade deals that are smart deals, not stupid deals. And you know, Wisconsin, I wrote down some notes. And look, I thought I had a day here. You know, it's one of those things. Look, I wrote down some notes, and it's like devastating. So Walker came out today. I wrote down notes about Wisconsin. Look, he certainly can't endorse me after what I did to him in the race, right? But look at this. By the summer of 2015, Wisconsin was facing a $2.2 billion 2-year budget deficit. That's terrible. By the way, these are out of books, right? This isn't Trump. This is out of books. Total state debt is $45 billion. Now, maybe somebody's going to tell me that's wrong, but again, these are $45 billion, very high, one of the higher ones. 20,000 fewer people in labor force in Wisconsin than 7 years ago, even though population has grown by 100,000. So your population is higher. And now I wouldn't have done this, but when he endorsed Cruz, what am I going to do? Am I going to say he's doing a great job? He's not doing a great job. You know, he comes in his motorcycle jacket, a big Harley. I love Harleys, right? But the motorcycle guys like Trump. They really like Trump. And he doesn't look like a motorcycle guy to me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Unemployment rate, well, they say that can't be possible. Unemployment rate, they have down 20%. That can't be possible. What? Is it 20%? Effective or regular? I mean, just effective unemployment rate, 20%. Hey, this is out of the big book. 800,000 food stamp recipients. Middle class hit very, very hard due to loss of manufacturing jobs. These are the stats, right?
So I would like now for us to see the difference between Trump's style and the more classical style. So Trump often criticizes the style of Cruz and Clinton as being inauthentic. And both Cruz and Clinton, educated in the literary arts to a degree, use structured speeches, which Trump then often parodies and says are ridiculous. And here is Trump making fun of Cruz.
You're going to win. But, you know, you do pretty serious damage, right? Because you want to win fast. And a lot of people don't love you after you're finished. But I just love you. I don't care about them. In fact, they're asking Cruz, you know, at the debate, which, by the way, they said, I won every single debate. Now I heard the other night, said, Oh, I want to debate Trump. I've debated him 11 or 12 times. Every single online poll has me winning the debates. And he's an okay debater, but he's a bad talker. You know, everything's so dramatic. Oh, and he waits, phony. And he waits. You know, if you ever see, he goes sentence after sentence, then he stops for like 3-4 seconds. And then he goes again. It looks like we're in the theater. We're not in the theater, we're in the real world.
And here's Ted Cruz. I won't play this clip, but it is a clip of Ted Cruz actually doing what Trump said, the pause. Ted Cruz was a national debate champion, and he does have that theatrical literary style, which Trump then argues is inauthentic. And then his next opponent was Hillary Clinton, and I won't have time to play this clip either, but she then is a very structured speaker with a literary style. She opened her campaign in New York City in the shadow of the United Nations. She mentions in her introduction women's rights and then Barack Obama, all which then helped to alienate the base that Trump was trying to appeal to. I will then conclude by referring to the Green Bay, Wisconsin rally, and I won't play that either, but I would like for you to see how well my students were able to make use of rhetorical theory to analyze Trump's rally here. And this is from a student paper actually written by 2 students, and they look at the C-SPAN, they analyze the C-SPAN Trump rally, and they write that alongside Trump's use of Aristotle's rhetorical theory, he utilizes Cicero's theory of rhetoric, including the 5 canons, namely his use of actio and elocutio. Trump uses figures of speech, rhetorical technique, hand gestures, and tone of voice to enhance ethos as well as to excite his audience. And so as a scholar of rhetoric, it is exciting to see that students are able to then learn how rhetoric can provide them with the equipment they need to be able to defend themselves from speakers like Trump. And then I end by referring you to the transcript and the video of the rally that I attended on January 24th. Here are photographs that I took just to make sure that I was able to capture the experience. On the left, you may see me standing in line. In the middle, it was a young man in front of me that cheered every time Trump said anything that was funny or repugnant. And then the Keep America Great Again, which was the slogan of his re-election campaign, is featured there. And so my position is that one needs all modes of inquiry to fully understand the Trump phenomena, but the C-SPAN video archive offers an invaluable, really a gold mine of opportunities for scholars, for teachers, and for citizens to understand the rise of the Trump movement, and that we need to make use of the 4 modes of inquiry: observational research, the survey research, as well as participant observation, as well as rhetorical criticism to fully understand why Trump has been successful. And so I will stop here.
Okay, thank you, David. Joining us now is our panel e-discussant, Stephen Lano. Dr. Lano is an associate professor in rhetoric at St. John's University in New York City. He teaches and researches argumentation, oratory, and debating. He keeps a blog on these topics and is the host of the podcast In the Bin. His work has been published in Argumentation and Advocacy and Contemporary Argumentation and Debate. He is co-editor of the book Adjudication, a collection of essays and perspectives on the art of judging debates. He was born in Arkansas, but mostly grew up in Florida and Texas, where he had what he calls a dreamy high school job, working in a local video rental store, not a Blockbuster, and it was a job that would make any 90s kid jealous. Welcome, Dr. Lano.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. There's a lot to say. I know I have a limited amount of time here, but I just want to kind of thank Professor Frank for this paper, which I won't mince any words. It's ambitious, And the ambition of trying to analyze these Trump rallies as objects from a position of rhetorical criticism is really kind of unwieldy. But Professor Frank does a remarkable job in the paper of grounding it, not just in archival research, but in economics, in contemporary political debate, and everything. It's really a fantastic paper. So instead of doing the thing that I think a lot of times happens in academic work where we strip it down to the elements we're most comfortable with, what Frank does is kind of expand the possibilities of what we could look at here. And he does just an amazing job of citing the roots of the economic rhetoric that Trump takes good advantage of there. One of the things the paper did for me, and I encourage you to read it when it comes out, it's just great, is it really kind of hit the nail on the head with what the concerns are with contemporary treatments of Trump and why is Trump so effective? And they kind of look just to the speeches and the speech structure. And Professor Frank doesn't leave that out, but he makes the claim that in order to understand these events, you have to use a number of different kinds of research, which is pretty rare. And just reducing it to the speech structure and saying, well, this is how this works over people, it's just insufficient to account for Donald Trump's remarkable position in contemporary politics. And I think that's really well done. Well, the paper really reminded me a lot of Kenneth Burke's work in a lot of ways. One of the things I think that was interesting is this idea that this, I think I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but David can correct me, the spezzatura style, which I thought was really kind of reminiscent of the part in Rhetoric of Hitler's Battle where Burke says, look at this weird kind of style. And it made me think that perhaps the proper way to analyze Trump's speeches is that the candidate is not Trump. The candidate is the rally. And that might really be something that, David, you might want to look at as maybe we've got it wrong in rhetorical studies, that when we look at an individual candidate, I mean, and there are precedents for this in the literature that I think you know, in terms of people like Eisenhower and other more traditional presidential orators, that kind of like gets us back to maybe a revision on Ed Black or Phil Wanderer in a way. And that's what I thought. But the other thing I think is Burkean, the difference in Burkean motion and action. And I think that I think the other good part of this is just the epic takedown that Frank does on all the people who have studied Trump's rhetoric so far about how much they miss rather than how much they include. Like it's kind of like Deleuzian, the theory should be worthy of the event. There's more left out than there's included in these contemporary studies of Trump. And reading that, I was like, wow, this really articulates a concern I had with contemporary rhetoric studies of Trump. It was really well done. So Burkean motion and action is the rhetorical effect where we can take things that are the root of agency and make them look as if they are natural things that are just going to happen anyway, and vice versa. So the followers of Trump, are they motion or action? Are these people who are being activated who are unpersuadable, or are they being persuaded or given agency here? And I think it might kind of be, according to what I'm reading in Frank's paper, a begged question that the rally can actually conduct the creation of rhetorical agency among the participants. And so participants aren't voting for Trump, they're voting for the rally, is what I was thinking of reading this. That's not in there, but that's the conclusion I came to. Also, it raises a couple of questions. Here are the two questions I have that maybe we can talk about. The first is, when we study rhetoric, do we have it wrong? Rhetorical criticism is a weird method. I mean, some people say it's not even really a method. And I think that what Frank hits on here is that we need to maybe reconsider that. And this is a really good example of reconsidering what rhetorical criticism or what public address looks at. And I came up with the phrase, the rhetorical utterance, after the work of Mikhail Bakhtin. So maybe along with rhetorical, not necessarily rhetorical style, but I forget the term that Frank used, rhetorical signature, that's the style. So rhetorical signature, maybe thinking in those terms, we could say that we're in public address, we're looking at the political utterance or the public utterance or the rhetorical utterance of the speaker. And then also a suggestion to maybe think about these events as carnivalesque after Mikhail Bakhtin's work on rhetoric as well. The inversion, like one of the things making fun of Ted Cruz in the presentation really pointed that out to me, that there's an inversion here that's very joyful and everyone knows it's temporary, but it allows for the articulation of rhetoric that would be indecorous in other moments of public life. The other thing I want to say that I think Frank's paper is really good at is it makes us really think about the old home of rhetoric as being pedagogy. So in the paper, it didn't really come out in the presentation. Part of the research paper is look at what I can do with students with this. And it's not as if Professor Frank is teaching his view of the rally. That's not what's happening at all. It's like, let's all look at this together and figure out how to read these things. And I am very critical of our field for sort of finding that pedagogical root distasteful, that practical pedagogical root of rhetoric, that this is about teaching people how to speak and listen in the public, constituting the public in that traditional rhetorical way. And this is a wonderful way to show how we can do both at the same time. And it's not even a question. It just happens. I think too often we dismiss the teaching as something we have to do in order to find critical, interesting critical academic analysis, instead of thinking about educating people for public life. And a lot of us here are not rhetoricians, but I think all of us might have gotten into academia in our field because we were interested in helping people understand public life better and participate in public life in a meaningful way. And I just think this is great because it really points to how you can easily do that. And it might be the C-SPAN archive that permits that kind of robust scholarship, and maybe conferences like this. And the paper is great because it doesn't even address the divide. It just eradicates it without question. And it's still, it's something you could do in your classroom and something that can be published as scholarship. So those are my thoughts. Those are my two questions on it. I think it's great. I think it's an incredibly ambitious thing to study, and the paper is incredibly ambitious in how it did it. And it's just amazing to see all these different varied things cited in there. And it was really refreshing to read. So thank you for letting me respond to it. It was fantastic.